So, in the last episode, we saw how Heidi liked the atmosphere of the mountains to play with Peter, Peter's grandmother, her grandfather, and Peter's mother. So now we will know about her further life.
Okay, so we'll start from her studies, okay?
Yes.
Okay, and what about her school, Mysha?
Yes, from the village, two villagers came. I don't know their names, but they were Heidi's grandfather's relatives. They asked Heidi's grandfather that if you want to shift, we have an empty hut for Heidi's studies. Grandfather liked peace, so he said no. So after a few days, Teta came in wearing a fancy hat and a dress full of artificial fruits.
Fruits?
Yeah, artificial fruits. Grandfather was surprised. Teta, what are these clothes? And also angry. Heidi came and hugged Teta. Teta said, I hear Heidi was 8 and hadn't learned a letter yet. So I am taking her to the Frankfurt where I used to work from 1 year.
Okay.
So Heidi and Teta went to the Frankfurt. So at the Frankfurt, the house owner, Miss Rottenmeier, was jealous about Heidi. And Heidi didn't know to read, so she studied. She started to study reading. But the teacher had a bit of difficulty to make her learn because she was 8 and hadn't learned a letter yet.
Okay.
So, Miss Rottenmeier's husband, Mr. Sesemann, loved to travel. He came from one of his trips and introduced Heidi himself. Heidi also introduced herself and Mr. Sesemann said that, do you want to meet my daughter Clara? Clara was Mr. Sesemann's daughter.
Okay.
When she saw her, she was sitting on a wheelchair.
Okay.
Heidi and Clara had such fun, but Mrs. Rottenmeier was jealous about Heidi. After a few days, Mrs. Rottenmeier, Mr. Sesemann's wife, was irritated and called her mother-in-law, Mrs. Sesemann.
Okay.
Mrs. Sesemann saw Heidi and had a special book. She gave to Heidi and said, while you learn reading, you can also read this book. And after you learn, you can start reading this book.
Okay.
So, after she was living in Frankfurt about 5 years.
Oh, and she liked there?
No, she didn't like there. She was missing her mountain so much and her grandfather that she was homesick and sleepwalked also.
Oh.
And there was a window opened.
Oh, did she get hurt?
She got hurt but didn't fall down.
Okay.
Miss Rottenmeier saw this all and then said to Mr. Sesemann. Mr. Sesemann called the doctor immediately and the doctor said she was homesick. No medicines would work in this disease. Take her to her olden home, that's it.
Okay.
So they took her to the mountain. Mr. Sesemann did the arrangements for the trip. Clara was very sad and the dinner and food meal that they eat, she had some chapati rolls to give to the grandmother, because the grandmother had no money and was eating dried wheat brown bread.
Okay.
So, when they reached there, first of all, she saw her grandfather sitting on the bench smoking. She gave a big, tight hug to her grandfather and held her grandfather as tight as she could. Then, it was snowing after a while. So they took a sledge. Her grandfather took the sledge and they slid down the mountain. Then they stopped at Peter's hut. Peter was delighted to see Heidi, and also Heidi was delighted to see Peter. And Peter was growing up. He said, Heidi, do you want to know the names of the goats? Heidi said yes, and he said the names of the goat. Then Peter, grandmother and grandfather had a big fun. Heidi said, Grandfather, do you want to meet Peter's grandmother? Grandmother was also delighted to meet Heidi and her grandfather, as well as Brigitta.
What about the rolls?
She gave the rolls to the grandmother. The grandmother was delighted to see her so kind-hearted. And she said to her grandmother, I could read the prayer book to you because I have learned to read to the Frankfurt.
Wow.
Then she read the grandmother the prayer. Grandmother had tears of joy.
Okay.
Then Mr. Sesame had gave some money to Heidi, in which they could borrow a cupboard for Heidi and a comfortable bed. But Heidi didn't did that. She thought that she could buy some of her rolls for the grandmother every day when Peter go to feed the goats.
Oh, with that money she asked Peter to bring rolls for grandmother.
Yes.
Great. Very nice of her.
Yes. So after a few days, Clara and Mr. Sesame set a trip, and then Clara went to Heidi's house.
Wow.
Heidi introduced Clara's father and Clara to her grandfather and Peter.
Okay.
And they had a lot of fun that Clara was on wheelchair and started to walk.
Wow. She liked the atmosphere so much.
Yes.
Okay. So that was the end of the story?
Yes.
Okay. See you at the next episode.
See you. Bye.